Welcome to Riks Europe. Today we are speaking with James Price, former senior special advisor for the Conservative government and chief of staff of the Treasury, and currently a writer of the Critic. Welcome to Riks Europe.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to talking to you.
The same. Today we'll be talking a little bit about what's been discussed as a sort of a sharp turn by Keir Starmer. Is it effective? What could it mean for the next election? And you've written a piece about this in the Critic called "Now the Left Have Nowhere to Hide." So you're speaking, of course, about Labour. Was this move from Starmer, I mean, is it credible? Does it bring more credibility to him? If I start with that.
Sure. I mean, I think it's a very deeply cynical and political move from him, but I don't think that's necessarily a problem. I think it's, in fact, a good thing because it means that the Labour Party are no longer trying to defend the indefensible and are at least paying lip service to the extraordinary damage that mass migration of a very low quality has done to Britain for a very long time. To go back a ways, ever since the 1974 elections, there were two general elections all the way back then, the winning party of every general election has won at least partly on a platform of reducing immigration. What's happened? Every single time, immigration has gone up. And it started to go up enormously from about 1997 when Tony Blair took office. Now, part of that would have been the enlargement of the European Union, and lots of people came to the UK, especially from 2004. But there was a political and ideological motivation behind all of that as well. There were very senior people in that Blair government who said, we want to let lots of people in, and we want to rub the right's noses in multiculturalism. And they made a big effort to try and downplay any of the difficulties or negatives that might have come out of it at all. The Conservatives got into power in a coalition in 2010 and promised they would get migration down to, quote, the tens of thousands. That didn't happen because, again, the European Union rules meant that we couldn't prevent as many people from the EU coming to Britain as they wanted to. And that was in no small part a factor behind the Brexit vote. Britain leaving the European Union, voting to leave in 2016, finally getting out the start of 2020 or so. Instead, though, of immigration going down and Boris Johnson being the Prime Minister and talking about having an Australian-style points-based system, it spiked up way more even than that. And yet instead of it being, nice young Europeans of a vaguely similar culture and similar religious base and all the rest of it, we saw a massive spike of people from the rest of the world, almost always low quality people, often bringing huge numbers of dependents along with them as well, who were not contributing economically. Lots and lots of people from very, in fact, I would say alien cultures coming to the UK and seeing a real change in a very, very short space of time. This has become known online, at least, as the Boris wave. For a man who so wanted to name things after himself, Boris Bikes and all the rest of it, you might have seen if you've ever been to London, the Boris wave will sadly probably be his biggest legacy. Now, that has really sunk the Conservative Party, and it's led to the rise of a party to its right called the Reform Party, led by former European parliamentarian Nigel Farage, people may have heard of. It's also forced the Labour Party, as you were saying, into this big change. A few years ago, when Keir Starmer was running for the leadership of the Labour Party, he said that basically any objections to mass immigration was racist, that almost borders were themselves racist, and any suggestion that somebody from a different culture might be from an inferior culture or might struggle in any way to adapt, or that, the second that you step foot on this island that you don't become just as British as somebody who's been here from 1,000 years from before William the Conqueror took over and things like that. Starmer has made such a breakneck turn with this, and I think it's because the political reality and also because the fact the sheer physical reality on the ground, the strain of public services, the increase in crime, the depression of wages, the fact that whilst we're letting in just eye-watering numbers of people, we're not building anything like enough houses for it. And all of these things are contributing to a real diminution, to a real reduction in living standards for people in Britain, and an increase in all of the things you wouldn't want to happen. Sectarianism, extra crime, as I say, pockets of places where people never learn any English, where they never get a job, and a decreasing tax base is having to support higher numbers of people who have never worked, show no loyalty to the United Kingdom. And Starmer, therefore, has made this rapid transformation. I don't really care if it's sincere or not. The fact is he's said it now, and there is nobody really, other than a few, I'll use the technical term, nutters, who are still advocating for very high levels of immigration. So I think this is a good thing for Labour, frankly, if they get it right. It's also, the last thing I'll say on it, it's a really good thing for the other parties, because if Labour fail to do it, then both the Conservatives and the Reform Party have an almighty weapon with which to attack Labour at the next election.
And you mentioned that Starmer was sort of forced into this. So is that what prompted it? He had no choice but to take this, what's been described as a sharp turn on immigration.
Yeah, I think that's right. The Labour government came in, and I think they believed their own rhetoric. I'm sure this is probably the case with other left-wing parties in Europe. They talk about how moral and good they are compared to their evil right-wing opponents. And they just, therefore, having been out of power for a long time, the Labour Party came in and assumed they'd wave a magic wand and everything would get better. In fact, they've been pretty disastrous by any standards. I mean, I'm biased against them, but even I am surprised at how bad they have been. And that has gone hand in hand with this rise of the Reform Party, who are not just taking votes away from the Conservatives, they're now increasingly taking votes away from Labour. And they're taking votes away in a lot of Labour strongholds. And Labour at the same time are starting to see one of the major negative effects of mass migration, which has been the fact that voting bases of ethnic and religious minorities who traditionally voted for the Labour Party are now outflanking them, often from the left. And we saw the election in July last year of a couple of independent MPs who were elected purely on the issue of Gaza. And their constituents seem to care more about that conflict than about anything actually happening in Britain. And the kind of questions that they have asked in the House of Commons since reflect this. They've argued in favour of keeping cousin marriage legal. They've asked questions trying to make blasphemy laws against the Quran, not any other religious text, illegal, and to curb free speech laws for insulting the Prophet Muhammad. You can see where all this is going and what they seem to care about. And these are groups that traditionally, as I say, voted for Labour. They're now being squeezed out. Some of the big Labour MPs who were expecting to be in the cabinet lost their seats that were traditionally safe seats, and many others as well, including the Deputy Prime Minister, very, very nearly lost their seats because of this rise of these independent sectarian Muslim voters. So they're being squeezed from that side. They're being squeezed from the Reform side as well, who are garnering support from another bit of the old Labour base, which is a sort of older, white, working class, often northern-based voters as well. And so they're being squeezed from both sides, and I think it's a political necessity, as well as I say, just the sheer facts on the ground that we've got nowhere to put these people, and they're not contributing anything economically, and they're causing other social and cultural problems as well.
But you say they're being squeezed from those parties. Where are their votes now being put on other smaller independent parties?
Yeah, well, so the Conservative vote was calamitous, and so a lot of it is just the loss of support for the Tories. There was never any real love for the Labour Party. They're still not trusted in all sorts of ways. You've only got Starmer aside, you've got Tony Blair and Harold Wilson are the only Labour MPs ever to win more than one term. So they're not a loved party in lots of ways, and Blair and Wilson both won by not being very socialist at all, frankly, in all sorts of ways. So they've never been a terribly popular party and are distrusted a lot. But the Conservatives, my party, alas, had become so unpopular that there was a sort of anyone but the Tories vote happening. You have a party called the Liberal Democrats. I've been in politics a long time. I couldn't tell you a single thing any of them stand for, but they're a sort of none of the above option these days. You've got the Reform Party taking votes from both sides now, both in kind of leafy green Kent in the southeast of England. That's all very nice and posh, and up in the northeast, which is a sort of post-industrial. And Reform won local elections in both just last month. And so they're being squeezed from there, and they're being squeezed on the far left by the Green Party, who for the first time ever have got more than one member of parliament. The Green Party, I think, could be described perhaps as watermelons, green on the outside but red on the inside. And even the Green Party has seen a shocking rise in the number of people who seem to care even more about Hamas and Gaza than they do anything else. So you're getting all these different squeezings happening, a bit of a resurgence of the Scottish separatists up in the north of Scotland who want to break away there. And because Labour's victory was actually very large in terms of the number of seats they won, it means they're being kind of picked off all over the place. And that's a problem for them, as well as the fact that, as I said, they came in without any real ideas as to what they're doing and have been therefore floundering for actual policies. There was a strange incident where they had hired a senior civil servant as the new chief of staff, who then left very soon after that election because it seemed that there was no plan for government at all. And one new person has now come in, a chap called Morgan McSweeney, who is Keir Starmer's chief of staff, who is a lot more sensitive to the public mood, especially when it comes to things like immigration. And that's why I think Starmer has made this tilt towards it as well. Now, the problem, of course, with it is that unless we change quite a lot of things that both the Labour Party and Keir Starmer himself hold really dear, which is to say things like international law, the ECHR, which has become a major talking point here, and the ways that this European Convention on Human Rights has been woven into domestic British statute, we're not going to be able to deal with these problems. And therefore, I think that Starmer is going to fail. And every day now in the newspapers, we see more and more ludicrous stories. Some of your viewers and listeners won't believe some of these, of people who we will not deport for absolutely crackers reasons. So there was the woman who won't be deported back to the Caribbean because she successfully argued that her Latvian husband would not be able to enjoy the spicy food back in the Caribbean. So she was allowed to stay under her right to a family life. There was the paedophile rapist who was not going to be deported because of his right to a family life, even though he was here illegally and the person he raped was his own stepdaughter. There was somebody who wasn't going to be deported back to, I think, Albania because he said that his child didn't like foreign chicken nuggets. And there was the Iranian who was smuggling in, I think, sex toys and wasn't going to be deported back to Iran because the Iranians would look very dimly on anybody working in that industry. These are all real examples of people that Britain has been unable to deport because of these sorts of mad laws that people like Keir Starmer have, up until this point at least, firmly defended.
And something you wrote about is that this move by Keir Starmer would secure a strong mandate for the right rather than help Labour. Explain why you think it won't help Labour.
So, I mean, give him credit. He said it now, and that's more than lots of others have done. And if he somehow manages to get us from the catastrophic numbers we're talking about, net three quarters of 1 million people every year net joining the country, and bearing in mind that lots of our best and brightest and richest are fleeing. We've got more liquid millionaires leaving and going to places like Dubai than anywhere else in the world. We're losing all of our best British trained doctors to places like Australia, and we're losing lots of other kind of entrepreneurial types to the United States and to other places. So the net is even worse than it looks because we're losing some of the best people. So if he stops that, if he scraps all of the ECHR stuff I just mentioned, if he really gets a grip with forcing businesses to change their models where they've been allowed unrestricted immigration for so long, it meant they've not bothered to invest in new capital equipment. Britain is the least automated economy in the OECD. We have fewer car washes now than we did 20 years ago. 20 years ago, it used to be drive your car into this sort of room that would do a robotic car wash. Now it's a bunch of Indians or people from the Balkans or somewhere like that doing it at rock bottom prices. If he manages to fix all of these things and seriously get immigration down to the tens of thousands, as was promised by the Conservatives 15 years ago, heck, even I would vote for him. He's not going to do that. He's not going to be able to. And that's why I say, I think when that happens, It will be proof that he is unable to govern effectively, that Britain has become ungovernable. And we can talk a bit about that if you'd like. It's broadly the power of the permanent bureaucracy over the elected officials. And it will show that he has said that he wants to do something and that something is very important, both on the economics and on the social issue, which is real taboo on the left. When he fails to do all of that, both Nigel Farage and whoever is the leader of the Conservative Party, either the incumbent Kemi Badenoch or someone else, will be able to say, look, even Labour have now admitted that mass immigration was a problem, but they're so incompetent and so beholden to so many special interest groups and far left nutters that they were unable to stop the hundreds of thousands of people legally coming here and the tens of thousands of people illegally crossing over in small boats that are happening every single day from France. Overwhelmingly, they're all young men of fighting age with absolutely no love for this country, and all they want to do seemingly is claim benefits and things like that. And there have even been reports that these people are hanging around outside elementary schools or primary schools here. Very, very concerning. And so it's going to be a great weapon because Labour are no longer able to say, actually, immigration's great. It's great for the economy. You know, it's more diverse and we get more tasty, spicy foods and things like that. They've got rid of most of those arguments because they acknowledge the scale is so bad. So I describe it as Keir Starmer having burned his boats, as if like an invading force landing on the coast and saying, that's it, we're burning our boats now, it's death or glory.
That were all my questions today. Do you think there's anything else that I should ask or add to this?
No, I'm really grateful for being able to talk to you. I think the only other thing that I would add is that one of those last points I made, that the reason that immigration hasn't gone down, despite people voting for it again and again and again for over 50 years, the same reason that we haven't got all sorts of other very obvious things fixed in the United Kingdom is, I would say, down to our absolutely enormous and over powerful bureaucracy. When Starmer came into office last July, only 200 people across the entirety of the British states changed jobs. That was the 100 Conservative MPs and ministers, they left. 100 Labour MP ministers came in because we have a fusion of the executive and the legislature. So we draw our executive ministers from Parliament. And then 100 special advisors as well, people like me. And we didn't even have any actual executive power to boss civil servants around or set them orders. All you can do is read papers and say to your boss who runs the department, listen, you know, they're lying to you again. Please don't agree to this. Please don't sign this off. It's against what we got voted in to do. And so until and unless that system very broadly changes, it's neither Starmer will be able to fix this that he says he wants to, and nor will any other future country coming in. And we're getting to a stage now where I think that many people are believing that politics has lost its ability to heal itself, because it's not just about policies. Policies of the right didn't work, policies of the left didn't work, because they were never able to be properly enacted, because the bureaucracy is all the same people. All the most senior people, they stay exactly the same. And they've got all the same kind of biases that everybody else would have. And I think that is at the root of the problem. I think it's deeply illegitimate. I think it goes against people like John Locke's theories about consent of the people granting legitimacy. It goes against Edmund Burke's theories of tradition bringing legitimacy. And it's a sort of self-appointed expert class who actually know nothing at all and have been driving the country into the ground and allowing the elected politicians to take the blame for it. I suspect that's happening in other countries as well, and I think it's one of the most iniquitous and deeply wicked things we're seeing. It fits perfectly with what James Burnham called the managerial revolution all the way back in 1941. I think it's something we need to watch out for and fix, because if we don't, European countries certainly are in for a very difficult rest of the 21st century.
Thank you very much, James Price, former Senior Special Advisor for the Conservative Government and Chief of Staff for the Treasury, and currently a writer for the Critic. And thank you for watching Riks Europe.